Hello everybody, welcome back to Between the Lines. In today's video, we're going to look at a short, succinct, profound poem by the African-American writer Maya Angelou. Before we begin, I'd like you to keep a few things in the back of your mind. The first is that Maya Angelou is a person of color. She's an African-American writer, and she has written extensively about what it is like to be an African American, like, the racial history of America, the Civil War that happened there, slavery, and, the entire context, right? So you'll have to kind of understand Maya Angelou in that context. So keep that in the back of your mind. The next point to note is that the poem itself has 3 stanzas. It's written in free verse, which means there is no meter and there is no rhyme pattern as such, right? And another thing to note is that the first stanza has 6 lines, the next one has 7 lines, and the third has 8 lines. So we see a sort of growth or a sort of momentum or, development in the poem, stanza by stanza. What is the poem about? The poem itself is about love, the idea of love, right? And liberty or freedom. So these are the 2 things that you'll have to kind of keep in your mind. The first is love, and the second is liberty or freedom, and the relationship between the 2. Okay, so the first stanza talks about what it is like before love has arrived, before someone, for example, falls in love. And in the second stanza, the poet talks about the arrival of love, and the third stanza is about the impact of love on a person. So this was just a general outline. If you're confused, just sit back and relax, because we'll read the poem line by line and I'll explain things clearly. Okay, this was just an outline. All right, so let's read the actual lines. Okay, look at the presentation. We, unaccustomed to courage, exiles from delight, live coiled in shells of loneliness until love leaves its high holy temple and comes into our sight to liberate us into life. Look at how beautiful the lines are. So the poet is saying we are unaccustomed to courage. To be unaccustomed to something is to not be used to something. Let me write it down. Not used to something, right? That is what it means when you're unaccustomed to something. You're not used to something. You're not exposed to it, right? So the poet is saying we are unaccustomed to courage. We are not used to being brave, right? And we are exiles from delight. An exile is someone who is driven out from their homeland, from their country, right? If you are forcibly made to leave your home and go to a different land, then you are an exile. So the poet is saying we are exiles from delight. Delight is joy, happiness, pleasure. So the poet is saying we are not used to being brave and we are far from being happy. We are exiles from delight. And the poet goes on to say we live coiled in shells of loneliness. To be coiled is to kind of be surrounded, right? So this is a coil. I'm sure you know. This is a coil, what I just drew. Right? And the poet is saying we are coiled in shells of loneliness. It is not as if, there's just a single layer of loneliness. It's like an onion. When you take an onion and you peel it, you have layer after layer after layer, and your eyes also start becoming watery, right? So it's kind of similar. So the poet is saying you are here, right? Look at the drawing. You're here and you are surrounded by shells of loneliness, layer after layer after layer. And this is the normal human condition in the absence of love. We are not brave, we are not courageous, we are exiles from delight, and we are coiled in shells of loneliness. Until love leaves its high holy temple and comes into our sight to liberate us into life. So this is the normal human condition until love leaves its high holy temple. It means just imagine a temple of love, like you can think of it as a physical structure, you can think of it as a metaphor, whatever you want. But the idea is that love is high and exalted, right? So love is something that is sort of in the heavens, and it leaves its high holy temple to come to us, the humans, the mortals, right? So another thing to notice here is the poet says love leaves, which is personification. Let me write it down. Personification. You'll have to pardon my handwriting. I'm doing the best I can with what I with what I have. So this is personification. Love is personified. So the poet says, until love leaves its high holy temple and comes into our sight, which means it comes to us to liberate us into life. This is the idea of freedom that I talked about, right? So to liberate is to free something. If something is holding you down, and if someone comes and helps you break free from it, then that is the idea of liberation, right? So love comes into our sight to liberate us into life, which means before love comes to you, you are actually like dead. You are not even properly living. That's the idea. So love comes into our sight to liberate us into life. Let's move on to the next verse, the next stanza. I hope everything was clear as far as this stanza is concerned. Love arrives, and in its train come ecstasies, old memories of pleasure, ancient histories of pain. Yet, if we are bold, love strikes away the chains of fear from our souls. So once again, these highlights in purple, these are sort of instances where love has been personified by the poet. So love arrives, love strikes, and in the previous stanza we saw love leaves, right? So personification, just keep that in the back of your mind. So like I said, this stanza talked about what it is like. The first stanza talked about what it is like when love is not there, and the second stanza talks about the arrival of love. So the poet says, love arrives, and in its train come ecstasies. So in its train means in its wake, following it, right? So if you're not aware, wake is like if you have a ship. So if you have a ship or a boat, imagine that this is a boat and the boat is heading this way, right? You see that there are sort of ripples in the water, right? And that is called the wake. So in its train or in its wake or behind it come ecstasies. Ecstasies are extreme pleasures, when you're extremely happy, when you're extremely joyful, that is ecstasy. You're in an ecstatic mood. So when love comes, behind love come ecstasies, happiness, pleasure. And along with it come old memories of pleasure. So once again, these are sort of synonymous, right? Old memories of pleasure. When love comes, it brings with it sort of these old memories of happiness, of pleasure. But this is a strange idea, right? Or perhaps not strange for those who have fallen in love. The idea that love also brings ancient histories of pain. So love is sort of, it has two sides. The first is it brings old memories of pleasure, and the second is that it brings ancient histories of pain, which is just so for if you look at the lines closely, old has similar meanings with ancient, and memories, histories, they are kind of synonymous, right? So old memories of pleasure, ancient histories of pain. So love has a good side and a bad side, and the author goes on to say, yet if we are bold, love strikes away the chains of fear from our souls. So even though love brings pain, if you are courageous, if you have boldness, then love will strike away the chains of fear, right? Chains of fear. So look at the word chains. This ties into the idea of liberty or freedom that I talked about already. Liberty or freedom, right? So chains are binding you down. You are bound by chains. And love comes and strikes away the chains of fear. It breaks the chains from our souls, which means your souls will become free. Our souls will become free once we invite love into our lives. That is the idea. So that was the second stanza. Let's move on to the third. So this is the final stanza, right? We are weaned from our timidity in the flush of love's light. We dare be brave, and suddenly we see that love costs all we are and will ever be. Yet it is only love which sets us free. What does it mean? Let me break down some of the words that may be difficult, right? Weaned, timidity. What do these words mean? So weaning is the process of, if you have a newborn baby, right? The newborn baby is dependent on its mother for nourishment. and you can't give it like external, you can't give it like vegetables, meat, or anything like that. It has to rely on its mother's milk. And when as the baby starts to grow, you slowly give it other food, and slowly the baby sort of becomes independent from its mother. It's no longer reliant on its mother for nourishment. And that is the process of weaning, right? So it is the process by which a baby, which is reliant on its mother for its nourishment, it becomes independent from its mother. So that is the meaning of to wean, right? So keep it in your mind. And to be timid is to be afraid, right? Timidity is fearfulness, right? So to be timid is to be afraid. And the poet says, we are weaned from our timidity. We are separated from our fears and made independent by love, in the flush of love's light. So, when you say, I have a flush of funds, it means I have a lot of money. So, flush, just associate the word flush with sort of abundance or surplus, right? Surplus or excess. Right? So, in the flush of love's light, in the excess of love's light. So you can imagine sort of darkness, and then once love comes in, it's like a flush of love's light. It's so bright, it's so full of love. When that happens, you will be weaned from your timidity. You will be separated from your timidity. You will be made independent. And then the poet goes on to say, we dare be brave, and suddenly we see that love costs all we are and will ever be. So love does not come without a price. It is not just happiness. It is not just pleasure. You will have to pay a price if you want to invite love into your life. And that price is all that you are and all that you'll ever be. Are you willing to pay that price? Are you willing to give everything that you are, everything that you'll ever be, all your potential and all of your self-actualization, self-realization? Are you willing to give everything just to invite love into your life? That is the question, right? And suddenly we see that love costs all we are and all we'll ever be, right? So this is a very profound, impactful statement. Yet it is only love which sets us free. So if you don't make this bargain, if you don't invite love into your life by giving it everything you've got, then you won't be free. You'll be bound by things. You will never experience true freedom, right? And so these are the final lines. Yet it is only love which sets us free. So if you want true freedom, you'll have to let go of your fears, let go of your inhibitions, those layers of loneliness. You'll have to let go of everything, invite love into your life, knowing that the path ahead may be painful. It may be full of worries, tears. Despite everything, you'll have to invite love into your life. So this poem, like I said, is about freedom. It's about love and the relationship between the two. So I hope this has made sense. If you like the video, leave a comment, subscribe. It would mean a lot if you did that, because like every single video takes a lot of time and I have to do a bunch of preparation before every single video. So peace.